started my career in consulting, and that's where I got a chance to look across industries, from financial services to healthcare, to a number of other places. And usually you start in consulting when you don't know what you want to do, which was the case for me. And actually during that time, it was great to see things across. I was working in the US, I was working in New York, and I had clients across the US. And I got a chance to see what it was like to be on the client side. And I was working actually with a bunch of marketers as my clients. And that's when I realized, this was interesting. I liked the work that they were doing, and I decided to get my MBA. I went to Kellogg for my MBA and did marketing and strategy. And post that, I thought a lot of people said, when you do marketing, you go into this traditional kind of marketing, consumer packaged goods or FMCG. But something about that didn't stick well with me. I've always known that I've been very data oriented, and data science and statistics, and really looking at modeling and internal kind of data science. And I thought a career in either services marketing or technology marketing was something that I was keen on exploring. And so that took me to work in financial services, and doing similar work when I moved to India at first. But then I realized I wanted to have a bit of a bigger impact on the world. And that's when I, at the same time, had, got a call from Google. And, I think that was, luck to some extent, as well as just being in the right place at the right time. And I joined Google about 6 years ago now. I was head of B2B marketing for India. And then within the last 5 to 6 years, I've had 3 different jobs at Google. I took on all of country marketing for India for Google. And then I've also now moved to Singapore, where I lead Southeast Asia as well. So my teams sit in the countries across APAC, and are driving user growth and brand love for Google. So that's a bit of my career journey. In terms of some of the things at Google, we're seeing, we've seen an acceleration of internet usage during this time. Obviously, the internet has played a big role in terms of keeping people connected, in terms of enabling schools to continue, to enabling, even home work and work from home. And so I think, the technology's role in the pandemic was very clear. And so that's a good thing for some, for a brand like Google. But it's also told us that we need to really think about new segments of users that are coming online for the first time, right? We talk a lot about it at Google, about the new internet users and the next billion internet users. And this means that we need to define and to build products that will work for this new set of users that are coming online. And so things have been accelerated, being ready to do more rural-based marketing with technology, or thinking about new opportunities in completely new segments than we had been thinking about before. I think one in particular that we're spending more time on is education. So building products in the education space that work for, the tens of millions of students that are being left behind, right? I think these are the things. There's a lot of gaps still in the world that need to be solved. And that's how, we think about it. It's not just about opportunity. There's still gaps that need to be solved for us to be able to really drive the innovation that you said. It's beyond being innovative. It's actually solving problems. I think ultimately that's brands, what we need to do is not just create cool products that work for users, but to be able to solve for gaps that exist. And I think the pandemic has brought those gaps to life. And so, there's still a lot of work to be done. I think in particular, one of the areas I'm passionate about is solving for education, right? I think there's definitely a potential for a digital divide to be created if we don't work actively at this to make sure that we can provide access across the region to everyone. What I look for is people that can connect the dots. I think working in silos is very risky, and especially at big companies, being siloed will only hold kind of strategic advancement back. And so, it's not just at Google, but more so at Google because we have so many business areas and business lines. Being able to connect the dots is the most important thing, which means being curious. To be able to connect the dots between things that you don't work on directly means you need to be curious. And curiosity is very evident, I find, when you're talking to people, especially during interviews. It's very clear to me, if somebody is really inquisitive, curious, that it didn't just prepare for the interview, but that they have this mind that is constantly asking questions. When you're asking questions, when you seek out information, that'll help you connect the dots more. And then to be able to actually action that, then you need to really have strong people skills. That doesn't mean being an extrovert. I think sometimes people assume that, to be successful, you need to be an extrovert. I don't think that's true. I always, say that even introvert or extrovert, you still need to work and to work with people to make an impact. Ultimately, it's all about the people. And so rich, deep human connections are very, very important. Really try different things, and then you realize what you like and what you don't like. I think people look at their careers as ladders, and they want to move up, and they're so focused on moving up that they very rarely take, lateral moves that might help them in different areas, or, they might not realize how much they like about a different side of the business. And so I do say to people on my team when they're thinking about career is to really think about the things that you thought you never wanted to do and do those. Because actually most of the steps I've taken in my career where I've learned the most have been the steps that I never planned for, and were the ones that I didn't think I wanted. I took them out of, being tapped on the shoulder and being told, oh, this is a good next move for you. And a lot of times I was like, oh, that would be crazy. Why would I want to take that job? But those are the jobs that I ended up learning the most in. And so usually it's non-typical, the things you haven't thought of. And so really think about not just moving up the ladder in the area that you are in today, but thinking about other parts. So that's my first lesson. The second lesson would be to really think about risks. You talked about moving across countries. I never would have imagined that I would have, worked in the US, India, and Singapore if I thought about my career just a decade ago. This has all happened in the last 10 years. Travel, take risks, do different kinds of roles if you can. Now, everybody can't. And I think, that sometimes, I do hear a lot of women holding themselves back, thinking that they can't move to a different country because their spouse, is working in X, Y, Z place, right? And so I'd say, a lot of that is in our head. And have you had the conversation is the question that I would ask, and are you talking about it openly, or have you made an assumption that that's the case? I think women always assume that kill the gremlins in your head. I talk about these, I don't know if you've seen the movie, it was called The Gremlins. It's from a very long time ago. But these gremlins were these little quirky creatures that really they were really not nice. And so sometimes you have these gremlins in your head that are constantly telling you either that you're not good enough, or that you shouldn't take that risk, or you're not the most qualified person for the job, and I think women have more gremlins than others. I think that's for sure. I see it across the teams I lead, so I have and do what's right for you, and just follow what you think is important. That's the most, ultimately, you know how good you are, and you know how great, what your worth is. And so don't assume that people have a different opinion, because I think a lot of women assume that people have a different opinion of them, which is not the case. And a lot of times seeking feedback, I think the best times in my life are where I've gotten 360-degree feedback, which told me that I was doing a lot better job than I thought I was. And sometimes seeking feedback allows you to get rid of those voices in your head, and to give you the confidence to move on, because sometimes you're the biggest doubter of yourself.